16 of the fantasy baseball season, and this season's really flying by this season here, and this is crunch time for most fantasy owners. But here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for this week. The first guy, Marte of the Arizona Diamondbacks. So Marte, it hasn't been that great of a season for him compared to last season and seasons before that. On the year, 10 home runs, 36 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 52 runs scored, a 257 average, and a 347 on base. But over the last few weeks here, he's really struggled. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 174 average, and a 231 on base. So Marte, we know he's on a bad hitting team over there at the Arizona Diamondbacks, but he's still a guy that I think could bring value to fantasy owners this year. He qualifies at a weak second base position and outfield, which is good versatility. And he just has to get out of the slump. He's the main hitter, or one of the main hitters over here in Arizona. And he's a guy that's had peaks and valleys this season. Last few games here for him. July 27th versus the Giants, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 runs scored. July 29th at Atlanta, 0 for 4. July 30th at Atlanta, 1 for 4 with a run. July 31st at Atlanta, 0 for 3. August 1st at Cleveland, 0 for 4 with a run. And August 2nd at Cleveland, 1 for 4 with a run. August 3rd at Cleveland, 0 for 4. So right here, it's been a struggle for Marte. Only 2 hits in his last 5 ball games. So he's really struggling. But like I mentioned, he could flip the switch, and he's a guy that definitely could be a main part to fantasy teams here down the stretch. So right now, I don't think you got to give up much to get him. Maybe a decent starting pitcher, a 4th or 5th guy in your rotation, or another position hitter in a deal for him, because his numbers are down. Batting average is way down. He had 318 last season, and now he's only hovering around 260. That's down. Home runs, they're about the same, and the RBIs are down. So right now, if a Marte owner is dangling him on your trade block, I think I would go out there and get him, and he definitely can help you at a weak second base position. The next guy is Ronald Acuna of the Atlanta Braves. So Acuna coming off, obviously, the torn ACL, and I don't think he's been the same, even though he's still stealing bases at a great pace. On the season, 9 home runs, 26 RBIs, 22 stolen bases, 42 runs scored, a 256 average, and a 354 on base. But the last month here, he's been idle in fantasy baseball, not doing anything. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 9 runs scored, 5 stolen bases, a 195 average, and a 293 on base. So I'm not convinced Acuna's 100% back. I know the stolen bases have made up for a decent part of his fantasy value, but the power's way down, RBI's way down, and the batting average is down as well, 27 points from last season before he went hurt. So the last few games here for him, July 29th versus Arizona, 1 for 4 with a run. July 30th versus Arizona, 1 for 4. July 31st versus Arizona, 1 for 4. August 2nd versus Philly, 1 for 3 with a run and a rib. August 3rd versus Philly, 0 for 3. And August 4th at the Mets, maybe he's going to start breaking out a little here. 1 for 4 with a homer and 2 RBIs, but he's really done nothing over the last month of the season. And I think he's not 100% yet coming off the torn ACL. Yeah, the stolen bases are great, but everything else he's not really doing is Acuna. But once this guy gets rolling, it's going to be trouble for a lot of teams here and a lot of opposing pitchers, because this Brave team, they're still playing great baseball, even though I know they're 4.5 games out now in the division. But they've won a lot of games over the last 2 months, and Acuna really hasn't done anything. So right now, while he's on down low as Acuna and been idle, this is a time to get him, because if you could get him on your roster for a discount, even though I still think a 2-for-1 deal gets it done, but not with top value guys. So he's definitely a guy that could play a big factor in you winning a championship if you make a deal for him and he breaks out. The next guy is krohn of the Colorado Rockies. So Krohn, he's had a solid season once again. 22 home runs, 72 RBIs, 58 runs scored, a 277 average, and a 329 on base. But over the last 2 weeks here, he hasn't done much. 1 homer, 3 RBIs, 3 runs scored, a 155 average, and a 197 on base. And to take it even further, the struggles with him, 207 with a 263 on base with 2 homers and 7 RBIs in the last month of the season. So Krohn, he got off to a roaring start, but this Rocky team, obviously, if I'm an opposing pitcher, I'm just going to pitch around Krohn. There's not many great guys in that lineup that could hurt you, and I think that's been the case. And plus, he's been banged up a little bit as well, I believe, with a wrist injury on and off. July 29th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. July 30th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. August 1st at the Padres, 2 for 4. August 2nd at San Diego in a doubleheader, 2 for 9 with a rib. August 3rd at San Diego, 2 for 4. And August 4th at San Diego, 0 for 5. So right now, He's struggling mightily as Krohn. But also, if you need some power, he can help you in that department a lot and quickly for fantasy owners. So right now, while he's not doing much of CJ Krohn, this is a perfect time to trade him. Because if he gets back on track, he could finish the season with like 33 home runs and 95 to 100 RBIs. And that could be a good 5-6 weeks left here for CJ Krohn left in the bat, where right now he's just been struggling, but he could get things going quickly, especially at Coors Field. So I would look to deal for him this week. The next guy, Correa of the Minnesota Twins. So it hasn't been that good of a first season here, I believe, for Correa. Only 13 home runs, 37 RBIs, 46 runs scored, 266 average, and a 342 on base, which is still pretty solid. But the last month of the season, he hasn't done much either. 4 home runs, 8 RBIs, a 205 average, 287 on base, and 11 runs scored. In the last 2 weeks, a 186 average. So right now, Correa, he's just not getting the job done. And this Minnesota Twin team, they've been up and down as well. Win one game, lose one game. But Correa, he qualifies and obviously plays a weak shortstop position. And he's another guy. It just takes him a few weeks here to get hot, and he could catapult and carry a fantasy team. The last few games here for him, July 29th at the Padres, 0-3. July 30th at San Diego, 1-5, a homer, 2 RBIs. July 31st at San Diego, 0-3. August 1st versus Detroit, 1-3, 2 runs. August 2nd versus the Tigers, 0-2 with a run. August 3rd versus the Tigers, 1-4, an RBI. And August 4th versus the Jays, 1-4 with a run. So right here, Carlos Correa, he's a good hitter. We know that. He's one of the better shortstops throughout his career in about the last decade. But right now, he's just not getting the job done. But you still, I think, have to pay a decent price for him because of name recognition. But right now, in terms of stats, they're not there. But like I mentioned, he's a guy I definitely would try to take a chance on here and trade for, because he could carry your fantasy team and help you big time for the remainder of the season. And the final hitter I look to buy and trade for is Kyle Tucker of the Houston Astros. So Tucker, he was a first, second round pick in most fantasy leagues coming into the season. And this year, the numbers, they're just down for him, especially the batting average on the season. 19 home runs, 67 RBI, 16 stolen bases, 44 runs scored, a 241 average, and a 328 on base. So the on-base to batting average ratio is still pretty good here. But last season, he was 30-92 with a 294 and 359. But the good thing with him is the RBIs are still good at 67, and the stolen bases are great at 16, more than last season where he had 14. But the power's a little bit down, and the batting average is down 50 points here for Tucker. And the last few weeks here for him, 1 home run, 5 RBIs with a 156 average. In the last month, only 3 homers, 11 RBIs with a 189. But Kyle Tucker's another guy who's a streaky hitter. And once he gets on a streak, he really could do damage and help your fantasy team a lot. July 29th versus Seattle, 1-4 with a run. July 30th versus Seattle, 0-4. July 31st versus Seattle, 1-4. An RBI. August 1st versus Boston, 0-3. August 2nd versus Boston, 0-3. And August 3rd versus Boston, 2-4 with a run and 2 RBI. So right now, this Astro team, over the last week, they're struggling a little bit here. But I think Kyle Tucker could get things going. He's got 2 good matchups coming up at Cleveland, which is a bandbox, and Texas, where they're struggling pitching staff this season. So right now, I think Kyle Tucker, he could get things going and have a big last few weeks of the season here and help fantasy owners. And honestly, I don't think you got to give up much to get him. Maybe a good starting pitcher or a smaller package with a decent starter and a hitter. But once this guy gets going, we've seen what he could do. So that's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for week 16 of the fantasy baseball season.